Well, hey, everybody. I'm Ezra, and I'm here with Pastor Jeff. And we just got done with the service, kicking off a new series, God and Money. Jeff, we're just starting the series. Why do you think it's so important to talk about money in the church?
Because I think it's the great temptation of the church. You know, I think it's a great temptation for people personally, me too, to long for money, to love money, to make my hopes and my dreams connected to my financial goals. I also think it's a temptation for us corporately to think that the answer to the problems of the world is to collect money.
Yeah.
And we'll tend to give our money instead of our lives.
Yeah, even like missionary work. We're like, we support the missionaries financially.
Yeah. And there's absolutely a place for that.
Yeah.
But if we're not careful, we'll check out and say, therefore, I don't have to be missional in my life.
Yeah.
Right? You know, that's how I satisfy that command. And even the loving the poor, and like we were talking about hurricane relief and stuff like that this weekend. Like there's a place to give money. Sometimes people need money. It's no big deal. But you should always, whenever you give money, you should always ask the question, how do I extend myself here? Should I go?
Yeah.
Is there someone that I know down in the Carolinas that needs helped and loved or even just checked on?
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
So the big temptation, so when I hear that, I'm thinking to tie your hopes and dreams to money. That's a big temptation. But you also were talking about it's not money itself that's evil. It's the love of money that's evil. And so what is the big temptation? Like in our culture or just humanity, why is money such a thing?
Because we want money to do for us what God is to do for us.
Yeah.
So that's the temptation. We have the mindset that my road to peace or security or happiness is paved with dollar bills instead of with Christ.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the sufficiency of Christ isn't enough for us. That the idea that Jesus loved us, he gave his life for us, the hungering and thirsting after righteousness, the consumption of the bread of life. You know, there's a whole John chapter 6. You guys should read the whole chapter. But there's a whole bunch in there that I didn't refer to in the weekend services about consuming Christ. And it's allusions to communion is what it is. Yeah. But the illustrative nature of it is like I am your life sufficiency. I'm the one that you consume and live off of. So we'll allow money to displace that whole dependency on Christ. And I think when we do that, what happens, especially as Christ followers, we actually miss out on the miraculous. There's no reason for God to show up in our life. There's no need for him to do something supernatural for us because we won't put ourselves in a position on faith that his presence is kind of necessary.
Yeah. So, but I would say I already am like reacting to that, saying, well, there's a flip side of it. I mean, it's not to be irresponsible, but there's a side of it that's like following Christ. If we were to really follow the Spirit, if we were to really treat money as a tool that God wants to use, sometimes that's not going to show up in like fiscal responsible ways.
No,
right?
And the whole series, I think as we go through this whole series, we're going to be talking about God's economy.
Okay.
And what happens is God's economy is backwards. So when we live a life of generosity, God becomes our provision. And it flips financial things on its head. I often have told the story of my mom and dad who lived by faith, who were very generous with their money. They tithed, and then they were generous like above and beyond that. They got sick. It kind of preempted their earning years. They got sick. But because of their generosity, they were not prepared financially the way that the world would tell them to be prepared. What they did instead was they poured their money into raising godly children. So God's economy then is that the children provided the needs of my mom and dad.
Yeah.
Which in turn made all of us like rich spiritually and relationally.
Yeah, you're so connected to your parents through all of those years.
Right, and I would take that. You could not put a dollar on that for me. You could flip that and look at kids who are the grandchildren of the gazillionaire, and there's dysfunction and breakdown in marriages and blah, 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 but all the money in the world because the money destroys because it's what's worshipped. So the learning curve is learning to follow the Spirit of God as He leads you through God's economy.
Yeah.
And it's not going to look like the economic principles we're used to in our culture.
So I could see some if people are in a life group that they're listening here, I can see how that could be a really good conversation to have. Talk
100%.
through examples of like things that weren't fiscally responsible, but they knew that God had to do it. Things like to give everything in my wallet to this need today, or et cetera, et cetera.
And
so,
I bet you Sushi that they would look and say those are some of the happiest, most joyful things they ever did, and the things that they're the most glad that they did.
Yeah, and man, I think it's one of those things we got to keep looking at. Well, I'm looking forward to the rest of the series to keep digging at all of that balance, what God's economy is really like, and how to not make money our God, but keep Jesus our God.
Awesome.
It's been Weekend Extra. Talk to you soon.